You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Monday. We are back. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire with the USA Today Sports Media Group. We are very late. I'm very tired. After going to Happy Valley and back again, I mean, it was a whirlwind of a trip. Getting there on Friday afternoon and then leaving on Saturday early evening, getting back, all of that stuff. But Michigan came away with a 21-17 victory. I know that this is kind of weird, and I was talking to my best friend about this earlier today. So we're gonna talk about the game. That's what we have. But I was talking with my best friend about this earlier today, and I was saying I've so rarely seen this version of the disconnect that's happening in terms of the way people are looking at Michigan football. Because usually it's the fans are like, Michigan to the ship. They're amazing. They're incredible. And then the national media is like, Michigan's bad and it's always been bad. Tends to be kind of how that goes. However, big difference right now, because it seems like the fans are like, we've seen this story before, whatever. And the national media is like, Michigan is for real. Michigan is doing some incredible things. Michigan just beat Penn State. And the national media is like, Michigan just beat Penn State, and it was great. It was excellent. They went and got a win that they don't normally go and get. And which I don't 100% agree with. I mean, this is exactly the type of game Michigan does win. Maybe not in the fashion that it did, a close game coming back late on the road. But I mean, they did the same thing at Nebraska. It's funny because I look at the comments on all of the things that I've posted, and you get, Michigan fans, maybe they're rival fans, I don't know, being like, you know what? No, this is a bad Penn State team, which it isn't. It's 6-4 now, which is disappointing. But at the same time, I mean, this is a Penn State team. If Sean Clifford was healthy, this probably would have been their second loss. Granted, he played against Illinois, but he was not all the way there. They were up 17-3 against Iowa. This would have probably been like a college game day type game if things had kind of gone slightly different for Penn State. And but I mean, it's Penn State's it's still a good team. Let's look at some of the numbers, because I think that's also important to keep in mind with some of these things. So you look at, Michigan had one more first down than Penn State. Certainly got a lot on the ground with 13. 144 yards rushing, so outrushed Penn State with one less rushing attempt. Only 3.5 yards per rush. It was that type of game. Held Penn State to 109 yards. 217 yards passing, which is 6 less yards than what Sean Clifford was able to get, but they did it with going 19 of 29 compared to 24 of 44. Average yards per attempt is 7.5. Michigan got 361 yards to Penn State's 332. Both teams had a fumble. Michigan's came at it, obviously in the Penn State red zone, which led to 3 points. And Michigan, as far as time of possession, slightly controlled it by 40 whole seconds. This was an interesting game in that it kind of felt like Penn State wasn't going to be able to do much of anything in the first 3 plays, because all 3 plays just blown up by the Michigan defense. And I believe that the number was that I think it was 32 or 30. No, it was 38% of the dropbacks. There was pressure. 7 sacks on the game, 3 for Aiden Hutchinson, which means that he hit my number. I said he'd have 10 sacks this year. He does. What I didn't think is David Ajabo would join him with 10 sacks now on the game, because he had 2 sacks in the game. So in the year, you have 2 Wolverines with 10 sacks apiece. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. Aiden's just an absolute game wrecker. It's pretty insane that's how that's going. Let's see. So this is updated. So you've got David Ajabo and Aiden Hutchinson are both tied for 7th in the country. So that is pretty amazing that to have two guys, because you look at this list of all of these players that have a lot of production like that. Michigan's the only one that I'm seeing that has multiple guys, right? Everyone else is just like, oh, they've got one. Wisconsin's kind of up there with Nick Herbig, linebacker, with 7, and Leo Chanel, the other linebacker, was 6.5. But that's the next closest in the country. So that should tell you what you need to know about how good their production has been. It's been stellar. It's getting better. That makes you think about Ohio State, and it's like what I wonder is if they can get pressure on Stroud, which is going to be incumbent on them. Does that change a lot of what things are in that game? But we'll have to wait and see. Nonetheless, I mean, they got out a win. Cade was accurate, threw for 60-something% in the game. They had some really good throws. Very few that I'd say were just bad or that he needed to have back of that type of variety. I thought it was a really good game for Cade. And no JJ in this game. I think that Michigan fans they've been kind of split after the Michigan State game. Some still are of the opinion that, hey, you know what? We need to see more of JJ. And now I think after Michigan State, people aren't necessarily with that mindset. But this is a good game. It's a good building block. Certainly, if things continue to go well, there's 2 more regular season games. If, let's say, hypothetically, they do beat Ohio State, which I am not predicting still, this is the type of game where people would be like, okay, I'm listening, I'm paying attention, and and not really I'm listening, paying attention. I'm kind of off my train of thought here, but I think it would be one of those things that people would look back and say, see, this game was the one that kind of started that. That's how I would see that. It'd be like, oh, this was the one that really kind of got that going. All right, we're going to keep this one really short. I have another radio appearance, second of the day. So I am going to keep this podcast short and probably go on the SiriusXM app and check me out with Brock Heward and EJ Manuel from earlier. I'm still going on with Rick Neuheisel and Jason Horowitz here shortly on College Sports Tonight. But anyway, before we move on, I got to tell you a little bit about, college football fanatics. Have you heard about Prizepix? Prizepix is daily fantasy made easy. I love this. I know you will too. Prizepix is a leader in college sports daily fantasy. Prizepix offers more college football props than anyone in the world, offers all the star players, the Power 5, as well as the mid-major players you might not have ever even heard of. Prizepix offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. Make your deposit using promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Pick 2 to 5 players, over under on the projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entries, just you versus the projected numbers. Prizepix allows mixed sport entries. That means you can take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes in the same entry. Use the award-winning app on both the Apple App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. Prizepix is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out prizepix.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON. Go onto the App Store. Download the app today. Prizepix is daily fantasy made easy. All right, so aside from Jim Harbaugh's pants being on fire, that's a thing that happened in this game. I heard about it on the side. I didn't see it, obviously, but I heard about it on the sidelines. Hey, Jim's pants were on fire, and he got asked by Brad Galley about it today. I kind of regret not asking about it now, but I think the interesting thing is, too, in this game, there were a couple calls. I definitely saw Fiery Jim back being down on the sidelines. There were a couple missed calls by the refs, ones that were obviously missed in my eyes. I'm not talking about holds. There was the return in which John Dotson would have been on like the 5-yard line or so, and there was a block in the back, which happened immediately in front of me and in front of the official, and so he ended up making up to like the 20-25 or something like that. It was like the second or third punt return of the game. And Jim Harbaugh was all over the refs for that. There was another play that I can't remember, but he was all over the refs for that. Couple things, like I thought one was a pass interference that wasn't called on, I believe it was Andrell Anthony. No, this wasn't an explosive game. Here's the thing, and I've been saying this forever. People who start to like look at these games and they say, well, that type of performance isn't going to beat Ohio State. Well, guess what? You have a different game plan in each game. Every game is different. No, guess what? Penn State's game against Illinois didn't beat Illinois. It wouldn't have beaten Wisconsin, but they beat Wisconsin. Like you can only use transitive property so much. However, in the same breath, I will say transitive property of this game does give me hope for Ohio State in that Penn State played Ohio State so tough. I think Michigan's defense is better. The pass defense continues to be very good. I think that they did about as good as you could do against Jahan Dotson. Parker Washington obviously had himself a day, but it was clear that Penn State was throwing kind of everything offensively at Michigan after that first series. I know they scored ultimately on the first series, but it was like, all right, they're going to really do everything they can to really try to circumvent the pressure. Michigan did drop a couple spots from the number 6 pass defense to number 8, but it's negligible. Georgia's now occupying number 6. So, by the way, remember when Jim Harbaugh said we're not going to be able to pass on Washington? Guess what? Washington, who just fired their head coach Jimmy Lake, has the best pass defense in the country right now, allowing 135.8 yards per game. So it shows you, again, the game plans are the game plans for a reason. But Michigan's allowing 178.4. Penn State obviously got above that. A couple times Michigan has certainly let some teams throw on them, but not a ton necessarily. Nebraska had the most success with 200. Actually, Washington did with 293, and then Nebraska with 291. But other than that, their numbers 191, 46, 156, 167, 133. That 133 to Northwestern is very notable because they usually throw about 250 yards a game, no matter who it's against, except for Wisconsin. Indiana 88. I know they had Donovan McCulley, but they still tend to get a bit more than that as well. Penn State had 233 passing yards in that game. Let's see where that ranks, because I think that's also important to note. So that was the 4th lowest of the season. They had 199 against Indiana, 180 against Iowa. Keeping in mind that against Iowa, Sean Clifford was injured. 165 against Illinois. Sean Clifford was still injured but playing. And then, you look at Ohio State, they got 361. Maryland, 363. Wisconsin, 247. So Michigan held them to a number under what Wisconsin holds them. So this tells me that Michigan's defense is right there. The question is, how much will they be able to replicate that in a couple weeks? Because that's the difficult thing. You look at what they did against Ohio State. They allowed 161 rush yards, 305 pass yards. Michigan's got to be somewhere around there. That's what Penn State did. Somewhere around there. And they basically gave up about a similar pass rushing yards as Michigan, who had 144. But obviously more passing yards. So they're going to have to be somewhere around there. Rushing yard-wise, what Penn State did was about what they tend to do. Unfortunately, Ohio State, they only got 33 yards. But, they've had 240 yards against Ball State, 209 against Indiana. But against Iowa, 107. Michigan held them to 109. So, very similar offensive output against Michigan's defense as the Iowa defense. No transitive anything there, but just kind of saying. So, it'll be interesting. Now, they obviously Michigan was able to slow Jahan Dotson. Ohio State's got a lot more than that. But this will be the best defensive front that Ohio State will have seen. So, if you can get C.J. Stroud off of his spot, make him uncomfortable, make it so he's got to make errant throws, you've got a shot. And I think if you play Michigan's game, I think Michigan will probably try to play the slow run game. Let's not make it a high shootout type situation. Kind of like what Joel Klatt said about MSU. You don't want to get into a shootout with these guys. It didn't end up being a traditional shootout, but in a way, with the way Kenneth Walker was playing kind of ended up being that, right? And Michigan lost that. So I don't think you want to go score for score with Ohio State. So it's a matter of try to start early, confuse them early, get a lead, nurse the lead. I know we're 2 weeks out, but obviously that's starting to be on the mind. But the reason why I say that as well now is because you're going up against a Maryland team that is obviously very good at passing the football. Not as good at running, but very good at passing. Against Penn State, Maryland had 371 yards, for instance. Let's look at Maryland for a quick second, and then we're gonna move on. We're keeping this, like I said, we're keeping this one short. But against Ohio State, Maryland had 279 passing yards, 56 rushing yards. So the defense stood up for Ohio State against Maryland. So we'll get a good idea to some degree what Michigan's able to do against Maryland and how they've done against common opponents, because there's been a lot of them. Maryland got 350 yards against Michigan State. No surprise, 101 rushing yards against them. Let's see, what's any other good teams that they have in common? Not really. So Iowa held them to their lowest with 174. That was the 5 or 6 interception game that they had, their first loss of the year. They've only gotten one more so far against Indiana. So Michigan should be 10-1 coming out of this week. And then, which is, by the way, much better than I think any single person would have said before the season. I think if I would have said they're going to be 10-1 with the only loss being to Michigan State, everyone would have called me crazy. Everyone would have called me a homer. They would have said, what about Wisconsin and Penn State? Blah, blah, blah. Especially with those 2 games being on the road. So it's still trending well. We'll see about Ohio State. All right, let's keep this train going. I said keeping it nice and short, and we'll start getting more into the longer, full-length episodes here shortly. Anyway, y'all know about Built Bar, how much I love Built Bar. I have a box upstairs. I'm going to have another Built Bar tonight for sure. Peanut butter brownie, my favorite. Although we'll see how I feel, because I feel like I'm really craving the coconut brownie chunk, which I have a box of that coming as well. Super amped for those. But if you don't know what Built Bar is, a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's high protein, low calorie, low carb. I can have 2 at a time and not feel like a complete glutton, though it is out of pure gluttony that I tend to have 2 at a time because they are that delicious. Go to Built.com, put in promo code LOCK15. That's Built.com, promo code LOCK15 to get your next order of Built Bar. Do like me, I put my money where my mouth is. I have bought dozens of boxes. Like I said, I have one upstairs. I have another one coming. This is my own money. This is not what they're sending me. They still send me stuff, and I still am like, yeah, I need more, and I buy more. That's how it goes, because I believe in the product. I love it that much. So Built.com, promo code LOCKED15. All right. I feel like a schlub today. I kind of look like it, right? I got the hat for if you're watching. And some of you might only be watching if I have the issues that I've had lately trying to get some of these up. I was so focused last week on getting podcasts up on YouTube, because it takes a lot longer for the video and all of that, like the mailbag never made it up. Like I uploaded it didn't upload for some reason. I don't know what happened. I got to Penn State. I tried to re-upload it. I realized, well, thanks to Trent Noop, he's like, hey, that's not the right episode. I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have the newest episode on this computer since that's my laptop home computer. So sorry about that. One of the episodes just did not make it onto the audio platforms somehow. I don't know how, but because I uploaded it, it just, maybe I didn't hit publish. I don't know. Sometimes that happens. But anyway, so we right now things are going well for Michigan for the most part. Don't expect Blake Corum to play based off what Harbaugh told ESPN. He said that Blake Corum would be out at least 2 games, so there's a chance that we don't see Blake Corum at all against Ohio State, which would be a giant blow. They need him for that game to be healthy. But everyone else, aside from Jamon Green, returned, so that's good. Didn't see a lot of Andrell Anthony, which is something I don't know if they're doing like Michigan State and just kind of whatever, if he's not full go, but they just wanted to get him out there a little bit. I mean, Cornelius Johnson had himself a good game against Penn State. We talked a little bit about the defense. How about Rod Moore, by the way? Rod Moore had a great game playing safety, true freshman coming in on a big stage and doing what he did. So looking at the guys who did perform, I mean, there were 4 guys receiving-wise that did an excellent job. I mean, actually, I'll say 5. I had Mike Sainer still. He had a couple. He only had 11 yards, but he had some timely catches. 2 catches out of 3 targets. But Erica All, obviously, with the game-winning touchdown, running on a high ankle sprain. Amazing job by him. Cornelius Johnson, he reeled in 3 of his 6 targets for 51 yards. And Roman Wilson had 2 of the touchdowns. Michigan scoring in all 3 touchdowns, not all red zone. Only one of them technically was red zone. Good joke by my friend Patrick Barron. Actually, it was someone else's joke, but he told it to me. Which was Michigan. The first touchdown, I believe, was 21. They were on the 21-yard line. It says you don't have Penn State made a big mistake by letting them get 1 more yard before they threw their touchdown play. But nonetheless, the fact that they got touchdowns, 3 touchdowns rather than any field goals, because so many of these games, especially against tough defenses, you don't expect them anymore to score those touchdowns. No field goal attempts, so that's good news for Michigan. Again, that they need to be in the habit of that this week, obviously this last week they were, and then this week, and then they can't settle for field goals at all against Ohio State. They just cannot do it unless they have a commanding lead. Or let's say if it's 14-0, yeah, kick that field goal, go up 17, but make it a 3-score game. But I mean, that's the only way. Is after that you got to score another touchdown, because before too long, Ohio State will be coming back. Best case scenario, Michigan gets out of College Park without any injuries. Looks okay, right? They don't have to look amazing. I don't care if they look amazing as long as they escape with a win, no injuries, whatever. Because again, each game is its own thing. You expect we'll get up for Ohio State. Ohio State needs to beat Michigan State. It needs to be, best case scenario is they just need to go out there and do like they did this last week. And if they can do that, then you won't have an issue like 2015 or almost losing to Maryland in 2018, where they come in angry. You don't want them to be angry. You want them to be flying high, thinking that they're all that. Especially because there's a lot of players that haven't played against Michigan or haven't played. I mean, obviously they haven't played in 2 years, but you don't want some of these other guys to be like, we need to make someone pay. You don't want that. So, all right, that's going to do it for me today. That's all I got. So, yeah, keeping it nice, short and sweet. We'll be back Tuesday to continue talking about Michigan things. We'll do Pro Football Focus on Wednesday, Mailbag Thursday, preview on Friday. See how all that works since I am traveling to College Park on Thursday, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, thank you for watching and or listening. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.